We'll have 300 garages, a 1.6 mile performance track, an 80 acre off-road track, a 2 acre skid pad, and a 35,000 square foot corporate event space. I have a membership-based club. I got driving schools. I got corporate events. I have sponsorship. I have public events. We actually have a women's drivers club, wine tastings and dinners. And I take 20 couples to Europe every year to drive cars through Italy. We do charity events. And there's a social committee. Like they plan their own events. Every month at M1, we'll do the same thing here. There's an Italian night, and there's a food truck rally, and there's a charity thing. And our zoning actually allows for overnight stays. We have bathrooms and kitchens and bars and wine cellars and armories and cars on lifts and workshops. Right after the bankruptcy, there was a federal trust created to take 88 General Motors properties and put them in, basically redevelop them and put them into unique use cases, because General Motors was sitting on them, never going to do anything with them because of the environmental liability. There's no better way to revitalize a historic automotive property into a modern automotive destination. In the 1800s, there was the Rapid Motor Company, tanks during the war, those cool buses, those General Motors buses with a bubble front on Woodward Avenue, by the way. Well, my project spurred $1 billion of new development. Our Cars and Coffee there, we get 1,400 cars on a Saturday morning on average. So we spent 5 months crushing concrete. So it's actually one of the largest recycling jobs in America at the time. Did you find anything? Jimmy Hoffa?
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars with my new friend, Brad Olashansky, and I'm so excited to have Brad on here. Brad is the founder, and I want to say it right, of M1 Concourse in Pontiac, Michigan. Brad took an old General Motors truck and bus plant that became available through the General Motors bankruptcy and created a venue that has not a racetrack, but a fast driving track or a test track or driving school track or safety track or manufacturers allowing people to try their cars track for this kind of idea. Also, corporate entity inside, restaurant, and people buy their garage condominium. He was the founder of that. He's since sold that. Now under development are the Tampa and Nashville locations of the Motor Enclave that this community sorely needs. I'm so excited to be able to talk to him about this. Those of you that knew me in my exotic car days and still contact me for exotic car advice or guidance or referrals know what a social aspect automobiles are to me. So I'm very excited to introduce you to Brad, and let's get started.
No, that's exactly right. Basically, took the idea of creating an automotive experience center in Metro Detroit. And many people told me I was crazy and it wouldn't work. And I ended up buying a former General Motors factory property out of the bankruptcy in 2012 and developed a new version of these sort of automotive country clubs. Most of them are racing oriented. Mine is more about community and camaraderie, and sort of the foundation is the garage community. And we happen to have a racetrack that we don't use for racing. We use for high performance driving and corporate events and corporate entertainment and driving schools. So
what's the difference between racing? You already got me into what's the difference between racing and high performance driving? Is it just that you can't pass someone and race them?
We can actually pass, but we just don't have any. We have no competitive. There's no winner. We're not trying to win a race. Which numerous reasons why it's different. One is it's way better on the insurance. It's way safer. And it's a different business where I've got, people that pay me to be members of a club to drive their cars versus, people trying to race, cars. I always say the auto enthusiast audience is massive. The racing audience is very narrow, and the racing audience that has money is 1,000 guys in the U.S. So, unless you're in the Formula One or NASCAR game, which is a totally different business, it's very hard to make a business viable if you're based on racing. My business is based on developing a community. It's a lifestyle business where people want to come hang out, have a garage, a man cave, office, entertainment space, and, oh, by the way, drive periodically. But the driving on my track is predominantly corporate entertainment and driving schools for, non-members.
And you mentioned driving schools. I've got a background with a number of manufacturers where as a dealer, we would go have a driving day to try out the new model, and they would have professional drivers, and they would tell us to hit the gas as hard as you can until you get to this cone and then lay on the brakes and then make a left. And here's a wet area and I want you to try the ABS and turn. Is this the sort of thing?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And we do plenty of that. Actually, all the manufacturers rent our facilities for that purpose. But actually, most of our clients are non-automotive. Outside our club, which is our garage owners, which are doing different driving activities, our typical client is, JP Morgan coming to entertain clients, or a charity event, or, something where it's just team building offsite board meeting type of entertainment. Sort of like what Top Golf does for golf, I do with driving.
So team building, thinking about that or entertaining a client. I'm going to assume that when someone's invited to do something like this, they don't all have a car or an appropriate car or a local car or a car in your place. So how does that work logistically?
So we have fleet partners at M1 Concourse. Dodge was a partner, Lexus was a partner, and they provided us vehicles, which we use in those programs. And we're working on the same type of deals. Many of the manufacturers love our business because we put thousands of butts in seats, basically, and people get to experience the cars in a controlled environment. And actually, when they're very focused and enjoying their passion. So we've proven that we can convert people from thrill rides or driving schools or driving programs into being buyers. So the manufacturer, we love to give you cars and have you use them all those different use cases. So we have in Michigan, we will have here at the Enclave, we'll have a whole fleet of cars, both for on track and off road. Here we're building a very large off road component as well.
So these provided cars by manufacturers, and it's understanding what's the number one goal of a retailer or a manufacturer is to get someone to actually drive it, not just look at it, not just read a brochure. So for this marketing component, do they provide you the cars at no cost or just give a very deep discount for the event?
They actually provide the cars at no cost. Some companies will give you the vehicles or sell you the vehicles for $1. Most of the companies, they're coming out of a fleet, similar to a media fleet, and they're
the press cars, right?
Yeah, and they're refreshing the cars every 6 to 9 months because they want to make sure they got good product there. They also oftentimes will pay for our maintenance and tires and brakes, which is great. But obviously you've got to deliver ROI to them, and they like it. And actually, the whole industry, as you may know, is just moving towards experiential programs. Away from auto shows. Auto shows are great, but auto shows, millions of people go to take their kids to get, walk around and have popcorn and ice cream. They're not transacting. So they realize with the hundreds of millions of dollars they spend on auto shows, they can spend a fraction of that and actually put truly engaged people, into vehicles and have a higher conversion. The testament to this is Porsche, who's made a multi-billion-dollar investment building their own experience centers around the world and not doing auto shows anymore because they recognize that they'd rather, it's the old CRM model, that casinos use. I'd rather spend all my money against my high value prospects versus 99% of people that are just that are looky-loos,
Right. And that's a tough line to walk. In the end, you've got to measure, if you're the manufacturer, what's getting something sold. I understand that. But you and I have similar background in that we're both Detroiters and Floridians. And what a difference between, for example, the Detroit Auto Show and the Tampa Auto Show. I know Detroit's tier 1. I think, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, I think Tampa's tier 3 or 4.
And it's a great sort of segue into talking back about M1 because the Detroit Auto Show was in the process of transforming. They moved it, from late fall to the summertime. Then COVID hit. They're planning a big outdoor festival and more of an experiential auto show versus in a convention center. COVID changed their plans. The auto show is actually moving to M1 Concourse, the facility I created in Michigan in September this year, to do predominantly driving activities with all kinds of displays around the track in a kind of a village environment, which is way more experiential and engaging. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I think it's going to be a huge success. Obviously you're going to not have millions of people coming through with their kids because it's a totally different format, but you'll have hundreds of thousands of people that are, way more engaged, and they'll be hopefully convert those people to buyers and be able to track that, is the goal. So it's interesting that they have finally made the decision that experiential is where it's at. They've always done ride and drives and all kinds of programs, but it's really the amount of money these manufacturers spend on auto shows. It's just not and they continue to do it because that's what they've always done, and that's sort of the industry model. But I think they're starting to realize that, programs at places where you can drive in a safe and controlled environment and that are more, automotive focused. And if you look at the tracks around the country, even the ones that are more racing oriented facilities, They have partnerships. I was just at Monticello in New York, which is an amazing track. They have partnerships with Porsche and BMW there. If you go to AMP, Atlanta Motorsports Park, they have BMWs there. If you go to, obviously Ron Fellows Driving School in Vegas, they've got huge Chevrolet program. If you go to Thermal in Palm Springs, you got BMWs and some other cars. So all these manufacturers are definitely seeing the benefit of, these type of facilities. And it's interesting how the auto shows are evolving. I think it's going to evolve very quickly, actually.
Well, the speed of evolution with what happened in last year, I mean, really, anyone that was on the fence, that created a lot of quick evolution. Now, when you talk about the cost difference, now Detroit, International Auto Show, or New York, Jacob Javits, or Frankfurt, or Tokyo, a few of the big ones, or LA, when you go, the manufacturers are there with what almost seems like, if it's a single level, almost like a half acre of cars, and maybe not, but it sure seems like that. You could, as far as the eye can see, for one manufacturer, or some of them even use the double or triple level with the stairways, and some of the cars are mounted upside down, and all of that business. And that's got to be millions of dollars for a single event. Now, Tampa, and I don't want to take anything away from the Motor Enclave in Tampa and the manufacturer, but Tampa, because I used to run the show, as the dealer, I used to run my display. In Tampa, the manufacturer has each dealer inside of that market bring a couple of cars and staff it. So I forgot, also no spokesmodels hired. So other than the space, I don't know what the expenditure is. But the reason I'm so excited about what you're doing here is when I was running exotic car dealership in the Tampa Bay area, I noticed that, and I was at first thinking, gosh, but you get such a smaller crowd. I mean, how in the world could you possibly get that many people behind the wheel and have that many cars and have that many instructors and all of that business? But anytime I could pick a number, 50 clients to either one of those events and mingle with them and watch them enjoy. And there would be a family component, because a lot of people would bring their son to be, or son or daughter to be in the other seat, their kid, and then have some kind of meal with them and talk to them. And then everybody who didn't know each other on the way in, the social component that you talked about, now at the end of the day, sharing stories, and they're so jacked up and they're so excited. There's no way that they couldn't feel an emotional connection to that make, or to that dealer, or to that crowd. It wouldn't matter. So I agree that I would end up, if it came right down to just selling cars and building relationships, that I would sell easily a few out of the 50, easily, and certainly build long-term relationships that would turn into however many deals and service, business, etc. Versus auto shows that I've stood there for 3 days, especially at like a Rolls and Bentley display, where all day long, and God bless them, I mean, they're just trying to be funny, and I'm not judging or shaming anyone, but all day long with the gift bag from whatever brand asking me, how fast does it go? How much is it? And does it come with Grey Poupon? And I'm not kidding. I mean, we would just almost like a robot spit out the answers. And again, I'm not saying that we didn't run into anybody that would buy, but we'd talk to however many thousand to probably end up with the same number of net sales at the end, and legitimate relationships.
The Detroit Auto Show, historically, in the last 10 years, the manufacturer spent over $200 million on a 10-day event to build those displays.
200 mil over the 10 years, or per event?
Per event.
You would have knocked me over with a feather. I would have never thought that. Okay.
Yes, and the convention center has to be closed down for 4 or 5 months while they build those displays. It's a totally inefficient model. And a manufacturer, let's just say an average manufacturer,
nothing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, but the big ones spend 10 to 12 million on their booth. Do a program with me that's all year round, every 24/7. You're talking about giving, $1 million worth of cars. It's not. This is like the differential is so massive.
You're right. They could do it many times a week, all year, and not spend that.
So that's where we're heading. And then you talked about sort of the network effect, or the people leaving having a good feeling. Now with social media and all these tools. You put them in a car, and then you give them tools to post their ride and talk about it. Next thing you know, that one track like the Enclave is all over the country, all over the world. We have in-car cameras, and we have telemetry devices, and we have things that we facilitate to push content out that the manufacturer doesn't have to create. It's created by the customer experience the vehicle. So it's just the model is changing, and we're still not at a point where the manufacturers completely understand the ROI. I think it's getting there very quickly, and unfortunately, a lot of companies just do what they've always done. I think, like you said, COVID has really changed their perspective in many ways, and budgets are shifting tremendously into different areas because they can tell that someone transacting. Can you with these CRM tools and databases, you can sort of tell what touch points did you have with Jeff Stearns, and they know Jeff came to a driving program. Jeff registered on our website. Jeff is a fan of ours on Instagram, and then the people that really know what they're doing, they can map that data out and say, all right, Jeff's highly likely to buy the new Bronco or whatever,
Right. He's showing the signals. Right.
Yeah. It was all guesswork before.
Correct. Now, Tampa and Nashville, what do we call them? Garages or spaces? What do we call what we're selling in there that we have the opportunity to become a member and have a space?
Yeah, so I call them private garages. Some people call them car condominiums. So in both facilities, we'll have large. So first of all, the largest car condo community in America is, I think, almost 200 units. It's actually in Naperville, Illinois, but it's just garages. It's a beautiful facility called Iron Gate. The next largest actually the largest is M1 Concourse. We have 250 garages, but the next one's Iron Gate. The third one is Automotorplex in Minneapolis, of all places. He's got 150 garages, I think. There's lots of little projects that have 30, 40 units all around the country in many, many cities. They don't portray themselves as private garages or car condos. They're more storage facilities, but they become communities of people with the same interests. So my projects, like I did in Michigan, will be very large. I always say to myself, like, if you're going to do 50, you might as well do 300. It's the same amount of work if you choose the right location. So in Tampa, it's exactly what we did in Michigan. It's sort of my version of the Auto Country Club, less racing focused, more community focused. So we'll have 300 garages, a 1.6 mile performance track, an 80 acre off-road track, a 2 acre skid pad, and a 35,000 square foot corporate event space. In Nashville, we're doing just garages. We're going to have 200 individual private garage units in a suburb of Nashville. In both those cities, I chose based on data. It wasn't like I just said, oh, there's a bunch of cool cars in Tampa. If I did that, I'd go in Miami, but those aren't really my customers. My customers are true car enthusiasts. In Tampa, actually, when I looked at the data of car registration, growth, and wealth data and mashed that together, Tampa, revealed itself as one of the top 20 cities, actually in the top 10. And people would say, well, Tampa's not really a car town. Well, we started selling the garages 4 months ago. We haven't even built anything yet, and we've sold 170 units in 4 months in Tampa, and that equates to about $60 million of selling garages, white box garage space. So clearly there's a market here, and it's a tremendous, when I meet all these people that are buying the garages, you go see these cars that no one ever takes out. It's like guys have collections, and people have amazing classic cars and muscle cars and exotic cars. And the sort of common denominator is Tampa's like Michigan. I think it's very low key. There's, clearly what I'm selling on the garage component, we have lots of ways the public can access the facility at a very low price, whether it's free cars and coffee or a driving school for $300 or whatever. Our garage entry price is $215,000. So, you got people who have to have some level of means to buy these garages, but, these people they're not driving around town in Ferraris. A lot of my customers come to me and go, oh, I would love to own a Ferrari or my classic Mustang or that car I had on my wall as a kid. I would never drive that around town. I don't want people to think I'm, flashy. So my customers tend to be very low key, and they love the idea of what we're doing because it's private and they can enjoy their passion for cars and buy those things they've always wanted. It's often like, I don't have a spot in my house. My wife won't let me give up her spot. I don't want to drive around town in a fancy car because if my employees see me, they'll ask me for a raise. Lots of different reasons we keep hearing. And it's exactly what happened in Michigan. So, back to your original question, it's really it's rooted in the garage community. Tampa happens to have all these other businesses that make it a long-term viable business. The garage condos are great, but it's a one-time sale because they own them like a condo, and then I'm out. So Nashville is awesome, but once we're sold out, that project is sort of by itself, and it's controlled by an HOA association. In Tampa, once I sell the garages, I have a membership-based club. I got driving schools. I got corporate events. I have sponsorship. I have public events. It's a nice business long-term, just like M1 Concourse really was the test bed. And we proved out sort of what works and what doesn't work there.
Well, and I really love the idea of the someone to play with component, because one of the things in the dealerships that I ran that was very successful was just simply introducing clients to other clients that we thought, oh, he doesn't really work much. He needs someone to hang out with during the day. And they started meeting at the dealership as a social hub on a Friday or Saturday night. I can't tell you how many times I had 5, 10, 15 cars parked for them to meet and then go wherever they were going to go next. So I love that idea. I think, I mean, for all the reasons cited by you, makes all the sense in the world, but there's got to be to meet someone else to play with that's interested in what I'm interested in. Now, you said a cost of entry, 215 grand. Does that mean that there's different sizes? Are there, so they can put more? So, okay. So we could have a private unit up to housing how many vehicles, give or take?
That smallest unit entry point of 215 is about a 600 square foot garage. Ground floor will hold 2 to 3 cars. All the spaces I sell as a white box, but they're 24 foot clear inside. So they could put a mezzanine in, a car lift, a triple car lift even. And then we play with the width. They're all 40 feet deep, but we can go as wide as someone wants to go. And then we can combine units. So average person's either buying a 600, a 700, or a 1,400 square foot box, which is really 3 car, 5 car, or 8 car. And then they can combine them. You know, we've got a few dozen people that bought 2 or 3 units. One guy bought 10 units, 14,000 square feet. So it's really up to them. And we sell them as empty box, and then we sell upgrades and build outs and packages, and they can do it on their own, or they can use our resources.
So you'll build it out, or they can bring their own contractor, or from a selected group of contractors that are allowed to work in?
Either way. We happen to have great resources, so a lot of the owners will use our resources also because we do so many units at once that we're very competitive. But I don't like to tie people's hands, and if they got a contractor friend or relative or someone they like, they can do that. But these people, I mean, our garages are an order of magnitude of $325 a square foot for a white box space. And then they're putting another $150 to $300 a foot inside. So the average buyer here, you know, you're talking about having, you know, $600-700 a square foot of garage, which is way more than most people's homes. But you're in a, you know, there's only 300 of them. There'll only ever be 300 of them. And it's all about community and camaraderie. It's sort of, I don't like the term country club because it's not really a country club environment. It's more like you said, it's all about social activation and being around people with a similar passion. And, you know, we don't have the kind of, you know, we don't have rules where you got to wear a sport coat, you know, when you come do stuff. So that's what I'm telling people. And people come to me and go, you're out of your mind. You're charging $300,000 for a 5-car garage. I could build a pole barn on my property for 150 grand.
But no one to play with.
And I'd say, listen, I'm not selling storage. I can get you storage a lot cheaper all over town. I'm selling community and camaraderie, and I happen to have a racetrack. But even the facility I'm building in Nashville has no racetrack. You know, I'm selling that exclusive environment, very high-end product. I mean, you can't build what I'm building on your property for even the price I'm selling it for. Our buildings are hurricane-rated concrete structures they come with, you know, dedicated 100 amp 3-phase power and rooftop HVAC and all kinds of different things that a normal person would not do. But I understand the clientele and the end user. But, you know, it is really about the social part. No, I mean, some people do buy
generator.
Some people, they can put in that, but we don't have it built in.
I was going to say, people, they might just go there for their hurricane power outages, but they'd have to have that set up on their own. Okay.
Yeah, we're actually outside we're in the 3rd tier wind zone in Tampa, so that's pretty good. We're also attached to the Tampa Exec Airport, so it wasn't part of my business plan. It's just coincidental. That's where the property was, and that's how I got it, because we're between an airport and a freeway, and that's how we got it approved, I believe. But turns out I'm selling garages to guys that have planes that live in Naples and Boca and elsewhere, who are saying, I'll fly my plane in 15 minutes from Naples, land there, spend the day at the track, and then fly home. And that's a huge thing. I thought, well, how many guys really have planes? Turns out, decent number.
A lot of them.
Yeah. So that's a cool element.
And they want somewhere to go, because a lot of these guys, because they just want to keep their book up and their flying hours up. They need a destination. They're right now, other than needing to go between their 2 advertising offices between here and Atlanta or something, they're mainly looking for somewhere to go to lunch on a weekend anyway in their plane. And
I keep saying, guys, it actually, it's predominantly male driven, the garage ownership. However, it's very, very family oriented. And we actually have a women's drivers club, and there's the wives and spouses and significant others are, I would say, very, very involved in all aspects. the garage, the hanging out, the social activity. Some of our greatest events are not driving events. They're actually wine tastings and dinners. And I take 20 couples to Europe every year to drive cars through Italy. We do charity events, and there's a social committee. Like, they plan their own events. Every month at M1, we'll do the same thing here. There's an Italian night, and there's a food truck rally, and there's a charity thing. And it's just, but the common denominator is generally cars, which is a different type of person, as you know. It's just, people say, well, you're going to get a bunch of, rich guys driving Lamborghinis. We'll probably get a few of those, but that's not my customer base. It's you really got to be into the car, either, the driving, the engineering, the design, the aspirational quality, whatever. You're not coming here to show off. Those customers are the guys that buy a Ferrari to park in front of a restaurant.
Well, you already said you're not in Miami. So not Miami shaming. So, being in that business forever, I agree with you that, of course, there's somebody that is into the show off factor or only for that factor. But we also have to be honest that because we like to have a conversation start over, we'll talk about some of the cars you grew up with. You worked on cars as a kid with your dad. You had a Model T, 55 Chevy. Part of that is you love it, but another part that's real, not necessarily showing off. You love when you're getting gas or something, or you're at a restaurant and someone comes up to you and wants to talk about it. I had one. My dad had one. What's under the hood? It's very social. And that's car, boat, airplane. It is.
Absolutely. And I figured out a way to make it a real business where most passion, when I did my research on this, looking at golf courses and marinas and flying communities and all that stuff, they're almost all passion businesses are really wealthy guys or gals that try and build the best version of whatever they're into. They lose sight of the economic model. And most of the facilities in the country are like that. I sort of applied a different mentality. I love cars. I love track. I love that. But I'm not the kind of person that's going to blow a bunch of money to show off. So I looked at fundamentally, how do you make it viable when you have to spend $100 million to build this facility in Tampa? Well, all these other facilities are built 2 hours away from people live. So your audience is very limited. Very few people, except for people into racing, are going to drive 4 hours round trip to go drive their car. That's why the car condo or the private garage is sort of the foundation. And it's a great model if you can, do it right and have the right location. When you add a track to it, it's a very difficult exercise to find a piece of property and get it approved because people are concerned about noise and people are concerned about traffic and people are concerned about lots of different things. So that's sort of the magic of my model is location, 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 like any other business. But there's not between M1 and my place here in Tampa, there's nothing else in the country that's that close to where people live. And that's where it took me 4 years to get to the point where I am in Tampa. And most real estate developers would not go. My friends say Brad's successful because he likes brain damage.
Well, now you've learned that location means near an airport.
The airport is a great feature because of existent ambient noises, but that's sort of why the property would even be available. They don't want to build residential between airport and a freeway, but for me, it's perfect. And we don't, we certainly have noise, but we don't generate the kind of noise that a sanctioned track has or Formula One or NASCAR.
Now, just thinking about it, somebody maybe traveling a little distance, and you'd mentioned guys coming from Naples and here and there, or families. I was imagining that your local clientele was, of course, Tampa Bay area, probably Lakeland, Orlando, and I would think heavy Sarasota.
Yeah, 100%. I would say it's 90% Tampa proper, which is sort of what I experienced in Michigan. It makes sense. And we're definitely getting Clearwater and St. Pete a lot more than the others, but we have a handful of Orlando and Sarasota, and it's growing. And we'll have a huge, we sold 170 units in pre-sale. Once I break ground, I expect the same thing to happen in Michigan. I got a ton of guys, probably 100, who are saying, yeah, this project's so big, I'm not sure it's going to happen. I don't really believe you. And, at this time around, it's like, if you don't believe me since I built M1, and I understand in Michigan, people thought I was out of my mind. But I, got the most successful example of it in the country. So, but some guys are not early adopters and they say, I'll wait till it's built, and that's fine. And so I think we're going to have a mad rush when we break ground in about a month. Cause a lot of guys saying, I want to see a shovel in the dirt.
Well, and that's it. Look, we all experienced the condo boom and bust here in 04, 05. Or I shouldn't say we all, those of us that were alive and remember. So if someone experienced that and had a hard time getting their deposit back or what, who knows? But you're going to build it and you'll get, and I'm assuming people are, if they buy now, it's pre-construction pricing. I don't think it's the same price once it starts getting built. Is that right?
Absolutely. We had pre-construction pricing. We have pre-construction price, pre-construction. Now we'll have, after we break ground, the price will go up again. And, it's fine. I say people, listen, I'm happy to have you whenever you're comfortable. I certainly don't want you to be uncomfortable. And if you pay a little bit more, most of the customers that are waiting, paying a little bit more is not the issue. It's more about comfort and being able to sleep at night where their money's being, sitting in a bank and is going to be, spent.
It's funny. I mean, I'm not, when you say money's not an issue, I'm not, I don't want to imply in any way that people with means are wasteful, because when I was selling these cars to the wealthy, they were never any easier on me on negotiating than anyone else. But there's also a little bit of a paradigm shift. I remember when the Bentley Continental, if you recall, Bentley Continental GT, okay, 03, I think it came out. So car's out. I'm required by the manufacturer to have a demo, one that someone can drive, and a showroom car. And as long as I always have one of those, I can sell whatever cars. And if that one's due in a couple of days, fine, I can say, okay. So keeping my word with the manufacturer, somebody comes in and wants to buy one of them now, showroom or demo. And I said, I'm not allowed to, but here's when I have available cars. I don't want to wait. Okay. Would you take over sticker? I'm not doing that. I haven't been marking them up. I believe in long-term relationships, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want you to buy from me begrudgingly just because I have it, but hate me later and no loyalty, So I just wasn't into that. Finally, would you take 10 over? Would you take 20 over? Would you take 30 over? Would you take 40 over? We're all for sale. and we get to something like 40 or 50 over window. And this was these cars were 130, 140. So that was a decent percentage of the sticker. It wasn't like a $500,000 car. And my principles and, my values went out the window. And I said, sure. And I could picture who the guy is. I know who he is. He's a big name in St. Petersburg. And when we were all done, I felt bad for doing it to the guy. Like on one hand, I accepted it, but on the other hand, I actually felt guilty for like nailing him. And his partner comes to me on the side, who was there, his business partner who was there with him. And I told him, I says, geez, I hope that we don't have like a resentment. He goes, Jeff, he's at the Atlantis at Bahamas once or twice a month. That unit they have in between the bridge between the two buildings is the one they give him when they go to gamble, and he plays blackjack, $50,000 a hand.
Yeah. And my audience, actually, I break it into thirds. I say a third of my buyers, have unlimited resources, and this is one more thing they're buying. They got houses and planes and this and that and cars, and they want it because it's cool. And actually, those people actually oftentimes view it as storage. But they build it out and they hang out and they come, maybe once a month, and it's cool, sort of stop along the way between their country club and their houses. A third of my customers, this is a very big decision, but they have a country club and they have a nice house, but there's one more social part of their life and they're there more often. But a third of my customers are the garages this is the biggest purchase they'll ever make. They don't have a lake house, country club. They're car people. They dream of sitting here all day and talking to car people. Might be a garage with 4 buddies bought together. And those are my most active users. And they're there the most, and they're not the wealthiest ones. It's a big deal, and every dollar they spend is important to them. So I've got that full spectrum, and I treat everybody the same way. And, even like you said, like the wealthiest customers are, usually the most picky and the most, interested in a deal, whether it's a deal or paying over. Good news is I've learned in my business, and which a lot of dealers as well, I don't negotiate. I don't change the price because they all talk to each other. So I have a published price list. That's it. No one's got a side deal. No one gets free membership. No one's got this, that, because I would ruin my business and my reputation in Michigan. And I tell people, you can literally pick up the phone and call one of the 250 owners there. They'll tell you, like, I gave nobody a deal because they all ask each other. So.
Right. Yeah, right. What did you get? Now, thinking about either someone flying in or driving in from a little bit of distance, will they be allowed, if they've built out their unit this way, for example, to spend the night?
Absolutely. So they can't call it a primary residence, can't live there full time, but our zoning actually allows for overnight stays up to 30 nights, I think is what it is. It's similar like an extended stay hotel. So many people will put Murphy beds or pull up couches or bedrooms even, just won't be residential. We're not residential. We're not zone residential. And we have actually exclusions in our condo rules are about sort of living there and spending more than a certain amount of time there.
Right. But a night or a weekend, amazing. And can they have a bathroom inside their unit? Or
these garages, if you go to my website at themotorenclave.com and look at the lifestyle gallery, these garages are most, and I got a dozen or so of tours on the website from our Michigan facility. They're nicer than most people's houses, honestly. They have bathrooms and kitchens and bars and wine cellars and armories and cars on lifts and workshops and all kinds of stuff. It's pretty amazing.
All right. So going back to M1 Concourse, you built this on a General Motors factory property. And this was due to or during the GM bankruptcy?
Yeah, it was right after the bankruptcy. There was a federal trust created to take 88 General Motors properties and put them in, basically redevelop them and put them into unique use cases, because General Motors was sitting on them, never going to do anything with them because of the environmental liability. Many of them were huge environmental issues for hundreds of years. Turns out the property I bought didn't have significant environmental issues, and you couldn't just buy the property. You had to pitch the federal government on your business plan. And I was competing. First of all, keep in mind, I was not a real estate developer. I was, and I was an entrepreneur, but had no experience in politics or community development or anything. And I was competing against real estate developers who wanted to put industrial parks and a casino, and someone was pitching a movie studio. And I'm, my whole pitch was like, there's no better way to revitalize a historic automotive property into a modern automotive destination. And they kept looking at me going, this is just too big, and it's in Pontiac, and why these customers aren't going to come to Pontiac, and all the reasons why it wouldn't work. And I just kept my head down and convinced them that it was the best use. And, now it was the original home of General Motors truck and bus, 100 years of General Motors manufacturing. Prior to that, in the 1800s, it was the Rapid Motor Company, which was the first municipal vehicle manufacturer. And prior to that, it was a foundry that made other automotive parts. But the factory literally in the 30s and 40s and 50s was 2 million square feet end to end of the property. They manufactured tanks during the war, those cool buses, those General Motors buses with a bubble front. They made those there. And the last vehicle they made there was the GMC Jimmy. And then for many years, it was a testing facility. So it was just an awesome part of the history, being on an automotive site on Woodward Avenue, by the way. So the whole frontage is on Woodward in Pontiac. It's just, and I'm most proud of the fact that, not just the fact that it worked, but the fact that the city of Pontiac literally was struggling for 40 years. It's still struggling in many respects. But General Motors, when they pulled out of Pontiac, devastated that city because of all manufacturing. Well, my project spurred $1 billion of new development on the same street we're on. It's called South Boulevard. It's incredible. So that area has transformed where now people are not afraid to go to Pontiac. Our Cars and Coffee there, we get 1,400 cars on a Saturday morning on average.
And I was looking at some of the photos at M1 Concourse, and I can't really tell unless I didn't go deep enough, but did you remove the original plant, or did you use the bones and build in it, or what? Or
the factory was actually torn down prior to the bankruptcy. But when I acquired it, it was actually 2 million square feet of concrete foundation, some of it like 20 feet thick, across the entire site. So we spent 5 months crushing concrete. So it's actually one of the largest recycling jobs in America at the time, where we set up a crushing plant, crushed concrete day and night for months, and then we used all that crush under our track and our buildings. So it was repurposed. And unfortunately, we didn't find anything that exciting. People are always asking me, did you find anything, Jimmy Hoffa, anything good? But we did not. We found some tires, but nothing, no cars, nothing good.
When you surveyed the land prior to making your offer and making your case, did you know that you were going to have to go through this 5 months of crushing, or was that a little bit of a surprise once you made your deal?
We knew there was something. We didn't know the extent of it, honestly. And even after we did it, we removed concrete and found asphalt underneath the concrete, and that concrete underneath the asphalt is. And there's, you're talking about a several million square foot facility that had presses. And, in the old days when you had a press, you had 20 feet of concrete and steel below the presses. I mean, it was insane. Some of the stuff you couldn't even, they had to literally pound and then lift out with cranes. It was pretty fascinating. So if you go there now, I mean, by the way, for 20 or 12 years, it was abandoned wasteland of just concrete and weeds. And now it's just this flourishing community, 250 garages and a beautiful track, and the auto show coming in there, and our events are massive, and the neighbors all sell parking in their front yards and barbecue and food. And I mean, it's really a great, and we have a track in the middle of a dense residential neighborhood, and they love it. And again, we're not doing crazy races. So the level of cars are predominantly street legal cars. So it's the same cars that are burning their tires down Woodward anyway. It's amazing. I mean, we expect the same thing to happen here in the area we're in Tampa, which is this little unique pocket at the corner of I-4 and I-75, amazing busy intersection. But the neighborhood, is this old sort of back Florida neighborhood, and it's, the home values there are gonna skyrocket, I would venture to guess.
Yes. We'll have to look. Maybe I'll have to buy 5 or 10 houses. It'll be like one of those movies the other way. All right. Well, this is, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really proud of you too. I mean, what you got done. I mean, as a non-land developer taking something on like this, I couldn't even imagine. Then when you talk about all of the things that you have going on, private and manufacture and corporate, and the food truck thing that you're talking about, I'm assuming that you've got a good staff. I mean, there's no way you're juggling and then selling these units. How many do you have on staff?
Well, you'd be amazed. We actually there's a team of 4 people currently.
Oh my God. It sounds like 24.
Yeah. In Michigan, we grew. Once we're open, in Michigan, we got about a 15-person team. But not all, by the way, all these other facilities that have sort of the race facilities, they have 75 people, 85 people. In Michigan, we're able to operate with 15 people and run all the gamut of events we're talking about. Here, we've built, designed, engineered, and overseen and sold all these garages with 4 people. And really 3 of us here on the ground here. So we're just a typical small and mighty team. We work way too many hours, but we're passionate about it, and we love what we're doing and the customers, and that's the key. That's why I did this. I mean, I had a prior career unrelated to automotive and in legal and in sort of digital marketing, but I wanted to do some of my passion for cars. So even though I work way too many hours, it's not really work. It's, and the end product, I guess the last thing I'll say about that is the real joy in this business is the customers. You were earlier mentioned something about the customer base, paying over. And the guy was telling you, I have customers that, they buy the product from me. They pay a lot for it. And then they buy me gifts. And I'm like, you just gave me $500,000 for a garage. Why are you buying me a gift? And they say, like, this is the first thing I've done. I've been successful. I got a beautiful home, great family. We go to Maui every year, blah, blah, blah. I've never done anything for myself. I've never had my own space, never bought that car I talk about my whole life, never got to drive, become a wannabe race car driver, like I always, and hang out with other similar people. And literally it's not one person. It's many, many people in my community. They're like thanking me. And I'm like, what kind of business where people are happy and can thank you for after they give you money? Like it doesn't exist. So that's what motivates me and keeps our team happy.
I agree. And I can identify. I experienced a little of that in that dealership life. It's because somebody feels grateful that you facilitated or made available something that really adds some value. You're adding value. And they're emotional. They're happy. So I felt funny from time to time taking a dinner gift certificate or a bottle of wine or some toy, model toy for one of my sons or something. Like same thing. Like I made a commission, I sold you a car, but I realized that when I would not accept it, let's face it, when you're giving a gift, the one getting the gift is the one giving it, because try to do a Christmas or Hanukkah or a birthday or whatever without everyone in the same room while you're opening a gift. The person giving it wants to see the reaction. That's what we get out of. Let's face it. I like getting something. I can enjoy getting a gift, but it's 100 times better if you're like, I found the perfect thing for this person and I want to see their face. No doubt about it. Yeah. So keep accepting them. Otherwise, you won't make these people's day. All right. So I know that your background, you're an entertainment lawyer in LA for 10 years. And on your resume, we have Sony and Disney and Simon Marketing, who was famous for the McDonald's marketing scandal. So, but you're not like non-automotive, because looking at my notes, I see that you worked on cars with your dad as a kid. So you're a car guy.
Yeah, and that's where it started. 100% car guy. Took a detour in my career and never really did anything with the cars, but definitely had a lot of cool cars over the years and went to Cars and Coffee and car shows in LA and always participated in the scene. When I moved back to Detroit in 2004, I was hanging out in Woodward and fascinated that no one had anywhere to go. Like I put my kids in the car, go get ice cream, go home. And my parents were always talking about on Woodward Avenue, the car hops, the Totem Pole and Ted's and these famous places where you can go and drive and park. And those don't exist anymore. So that was really the starting of me hearing my dad and mom. All they talked about was the great times they had at the Totem Pole and Ted's, which are famous car hop drive-ins on Woodward. And why is nobody doing that? And then I would drive up and down Woodward and going, you know what? If I had a place to park my car and hang out and talk to other car people, it'd be great. And that's when I ventured out and did research and looked at everything from racetracks and drag strips and theme parks and car storage and car dealerships. And I determined that almost every business is a financial loser, except for if it's rooted in storage or for sale storage, like a car condo. And the track actually was something I didn't want to do, but it evolved around industry interest, not consumer interest. All these tracks that are out there, they're amazing. And Monticello's incredible. Thermal's amazing. All these places. But you have to attract very wealthy guys that want to race their car and willing to drive an hour or two each way to go do it. That's a very niche audience. Well, I said that's not going to work in Metro Detroit. Well, when I started announcing what I was doing with the garages and the property and I was talking about retail and a car themed restaurant and some things, all the car companies came to me and said, how come you're not building a track? I said, well, tracks don't make money. They said, you don't understand. You're thinking about consumers. We're thinking about corporate use. So I realized that I could develop the track, have it monetized through corporate entertainment and corporate ride and drives and various things, and have it a nice amenity for my garage owners at a very low cost. We charge $6,000 a year for our members. Our competitive set charges way, way, way more than that because, they're racing oriented and they have a much, more limited membership base. Our members own garage space and real estate and are very, very vested, but I'm able to monetize the track and charge money to our corporate clients most of the time and keep the cost low for my owners.
Brad, are you going to need to staff this track? Because you're saying it's not racing, it's driving and safety, and I get that. But so you don't have an event going on. You don't have a safety class or a driving school or anything going on. It's just a Saturday. I'm there with my son or daughter. We want to take out our car. We want to drive. I mean, do we need to get checked out by anyone or checked in helmet or?
Yeah. So, we have just like any other, HPDE. We have, first of all, we have defined sessions. You can't just roll out of your garage and say, I want to drive. So every month we publish a calendar, and anytime there's not a corporate event, we leave in hours for our members. They end up with on average 12 hours a month of track time if they want to use it at defined sessions. And all those sessions include ambulance and fire and safety and corner workers and instructors. So it's a fully staffed environment during those sessions. The rest of the time, when it's corporate events, we need a lot less staff. We still have ambulance and fire and things because we're doing throw rides predominantly, or smaller groups. We do driving schools or autocross. So we're running that track, many, many hours every day of the week. My goal is, I always look at it as like we got X number of hours during daylight. We don't run past dark. And, sometimes it's JP Morgan in the morning for half a day, and it could be a team defensive drive in the afternoon, and it could be members from 4 to 7 p.m. The next day it could be General Motors or it could be, Porsche or GM or someone for 5 days renting the track. Then it's just sort of flip flops every hour. And, a lot of the use of the track, to be honest, is throw rides. So we're not doing, really heavy duty driving activity. It's more have your corporate offsite in our event center, do your meeting, your team building, your national sales meeting, whatever. And then we put people in cars for throw rides with drivers, and they get a thrill and they love it. And they post pictures of it.
I'll come out to the property. Yeah. I want to be there. The picture that you're painting. I want to wrap up with your Supra story with the roof flying off. You were 16 going down the freeway in a Supra?
So I was very fortunate that I had a grandmother who bought all her grandkids really nice cars. So in the mid 80s, having a Supra was that was an exotic car. And people used to say, oh, how's your dad's car? That's your dad's car. And my father was a car guy, so he was the one picking out the car. So we were very, very fortunate that my grandmother said, I want to buy each grandkid a car. And my father, my father went to the Phoenix Auto Show. He was in Arizona visiting my brother. He went to Phoenix Auto Show and he bought the car off the floor. It was actually the auto show demo. The car wasn't even out yet. And I didn't even know what it was. And I come home and everyone's like, this is like the greatest car, whatever. So anyway, I had this car. It was a Supra Turbo Targa, 1986 and a half. which is kind of like the early, I don't know if it's called a Gen 2, I think.
Very desirable car now.
Oh yeah, I'm actually I keep looking for one. They're all crazy high mileage, but I've subsequently owned. I own the '94, and I own the current one, which is a really cool car. But so I had this car. The Targa top was a cool innovation, even though the windshield moved back and forth while you drove. But it had 4 bolts on it. You had with a ratchet, you had to ratchet off. Well, my buddies and I at the time, obviously there were cell phones just starting, and you had a curly Q antenna on your car. And if you had a curly Q antenna on your car, you were like cool. Well, I couldn't afford a phone. My parents weren't giving me a phone, whatever. So I had a fake curly Q antenna on my car, and on the back just stuck.
They sold them at the car wash.
Yeah, just stuck to the window. But we all got it. We all decided, you know what, we're going to get CBs. That'd be really cool. So we get CBs. We install them in the under the dash. And they made a CB antenna that looked like a cellular antenna. So I'm like, oh, this is the greatest thing on earth. So we wire the CB in. I fished this whole wire up through all the A-pillar and underneath the molding. And I clip it to the Targa top. It's the only place you could clip it to, because it had like a clip with a little screw on it. So I clip it to there, and we get the whole thing wired up. We're actually like at a audio visual, place. It was like, I forgot what it was called. The famous place in Detroit. I'm blanking on the name. Yeah. What is that place called?
Mickey Shores?
Yes. It was Mickey Shores. It was Mickey Shores. So get the whole thing wired up. We're all hyped on it. We're talking to my buddy on the CB. It's all working. It's great. And I leave that place. I hop on I-75 and I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I'm probably going 75, and all of a sudden the skies just open up, and there's all this noise, and there's cars screeching behind me, and all of a sudden, I don't know what's going on, but the dash, like half the dash gets ripped out of the car, and I'm like, I look behind me, and there's cars skidding everywhere, and I pull over, and I realize what happened, and first of all, the roof's down the road, the cord pulled everything out with it that was hooked to the antenna, and this car is like going crazy, and I'm running down the freeway, and I think I was crying. I'm running down the freeway, and I go pick it up, and the Targa top is mangled. Okay. So the end of the story is, so I'm driving home thinking, how am I tell my dad that this happened? Because he would always say to me, make sure you ratchet that down. Make sure you ratchet that down.
Of course.
So I got home. I go in his garage. He had a crazy tool set, and I take a rubber mallet and I just pound the thing, literally make it flat. But all the paint's gone. It's all wrinkled. And part of the headliner is burned off, like melted from running along the freeway. And I put it down. I'm able to ratchet it down. So, and I got in my mind, I'm gonna tell my dad someone tried to break into the car.
You're coming up with your story.
So anyway, we go sit down for dinner, family dinner, and my father walks in and he goes, "So you didn't ratchet down the top, did you? Where did it fall off?" He goes, "That looks pretty bad." I go, "Well, you haven't seen the interior yet." That was one of my more memorable stories. I mean, we've had lots of those stories. That was sort of the craziest one. My father has stories from the early days of just crazy stories of backing out of driveways where leaving the door open and then cars coming by and just taking the door off, and then driving for weeks with no door, like stuff like that, which you don't do nowadays.
Oh my God. Now, was there any consequence?
No.
I mean, did the shit hit the fan, or did he just say, "Hey, you didn't listen, did you?"
Only hit the fan in the respect that, the car was bought for me, but I had to pay for everything. So I had businesses since I was 12 years old. I was detailing cars, power washing decks and boats. And, I had to come up with whatever it was at the time. I think it was like $1,300. It was a freaking lot of money.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Massive in the 80s. Yeah.
It's like crazy.
So 2 things. First of all, we've been doing this podcast since February. We've had Derek Bell, 5-time Le Mans winner. We've had Warren Brown, who built the General Motors plant in Russia. We've had some interesting people. I think that's my favorite story so far. I don't think I ever couldn't restrain myself laughing out loud. But it also reminds me of the story that you're crafting for the parent when something goes wrong. When we moved to Florida, late 70s, we moved into a neighborhood that was under construction, that my dad's buddy from Detroit was actually the builder. So my dad buys one of the houses. I'm in a block that's half just dirt and construction and 9 houses on the street. And now my dad's involved with construction with his buddy. So we're taking odds and ends plywood and whatever wood, and built a clubhouse in the backyard. And I begged my dad, 78, so I'm 13 or something. I begged my dad for a BB gun, and all the reasons why I shouldn't, and he finally gives me one. So we put a target on the side of this clubhouse, and I'm probably 10 or 15 feet away, which isn't really far enough, from the clubhouse, and I'm shooting this paper target, and the second I pulled the trigger, something went in my eye. The second, like, pull trigger, can't open eye. Now, I'm imagining when you're telling the Supra story, like, what am I going to tell my dad? I'm imagining that I'm going to be blind in one eye, but I got to pretend that I'm not blind so that I won't be in trouble with my father. So I'm walking around for 5 minutes, and it really hurts. I mean, it really, I can't open my eye. And I finally go in the bathroom to look at the damage. Like, I'm assuming I don't have an eyeball. And I open my eyelid, and the BB fell out. Tink, tink, tink into the sink.
That's great.
But all I was thinking about is how I was going to fake it for the rest of my life, because I didn't want the whooping, that was going to come. Or, he never touched us, but yelling, it was worse than anything. And when you talk about your dad, now, your dad from Detroit?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember what area? Does he talk about what the neighborhood?
He actually grew up in Huntington Woods, of all places.
Oh, Huntington. Okay, by the zoo.
He was a pioneer there.
Okay. So anyone listening from the neighborhood, I don't even know the neighborhood, but when I talk to the Altacockers and I talk about Detroit and like Elmhurst and Linwood and, these areas. Okay.
My mom grew up on Outer Drive.
Okay. So my dad tells me now, when he shouldn't have told me these stories, because then it rationalized that it was okay when I used to get in trouble. But he told me how he stole his, he was like 14 years old, and he stole his dad's car just to go for a ride, borrowed the car. And my grandpa had spikes or something in the lawn with like a string so no one would walk on the grass. And I know the grass was important because I think they were like in a 3-family flat, and, where the houses are really close together and the 3 floors. And and it's sad, he and my great uncle, and speaking of the music, so great uncle, right? My grandpa's brother. Yeah. Sammy Stearns played trumpet for Benny Goodman and Frank Sinatra, and was in that very stereotypical cool cat. Hey man, talk like a cool like a guy out of a movie in the music, probably smoking pot in the 40s and all that. So apparently my grandpa was in charge of the grass. Maybe they were on the first floor, so the grass was theirs. And he would always tell my Uncle Sammy to make sure the kids don't walk on the grass. Anyway, they wouldn't stay off the grass. And my grandpa didn't talk to my uncle for like the last 30 years of his life over the grass. I'm not kidding. So he had, it's sad, old Russian, tough, okay. Probably, we don't know really Russian or Polish, to be honest. It was just Soviet, But anyway, these stakes in the grass, and my dad backs out whatever the car was. I lost my dad, but I used to love these stories. And he scraped the shit out of the bottom of the door, and it's Detroit in the winter and slush and whatever. And my dad says he was like at 3 a.m, brush touching the car door. And the only reason that he got out of it is it was snowy for another few months, and no one was washing the car, looking, and had slush up the side. And finally, when it thawed, he doesn't know if my grandpa ever saw it or not, but oh my God, it never came up. But
that's great. So many stories like that. Yeah.
Love them. Well, Brad, I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed you. I love your story. I'm no one in your life that you could care if I'm proud of you, but I really am proud of what you've accomplished. And it's very complex, and it serves a community that I know I actually get why they love it and why they're going to love this one so much. So good for you and the value that you're bringing to society. I mean, of course, it's a profitable venture and you want to make money, as you should, et cetera. But you're making money by bringing value, not just enhancing the value of the life of all of these members that are going to get to know each other. Maybe not so much the super wealthy that just need a storage place. Okay, great. But for the people they're going to have family memories like we're talking about now on this track. And for example, what you do by revitalizing the area around it. I'm really appreciative of what you're doing.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate I feel like I got a connection to you as well, the Detroit connection, and made me laugh.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.